How far does your lens extend? In the case of the Panagor 50mm f3 macro, it goes all the way to 1:1. This is an interesting lens made by Komine sometime in the 80s. The f3 is the first version. There's also a 55 2.8, and around the same time they had the 90mm 2.8 macro lens, which is also fairly popular. But one of the things that struck me was just how many different names, brand names, were stuck on the lens. You can find it under Elicar, Panagor, Vivitar, Quantaray, Rokunar, Sears, and possibly others, but those are the ones I know of. And as for mounts, the one I have is an M42, but you can find it in the Nikon F mount, Canon FD, Pentax K, believe Olympus OM, Minolta MD, so all sorts of mounts, all sorts of names. It makes it much easier to find than if you were looking for one specific brand of the lens to go search for. It's a fully manual lens, and in my case with the M42 model, there is a switch to go from auto to manual, which is very helpful with using it as a lens adapter because I don't have the mechanism to depress the little pin and make the aperture diaphragm close. I use the lens on my Nikon D750 with a Photodiox M42 to Nikon adapter. I previously had a review on this. And Nikon is the only camera that you have to worry about adapting M42 lenses. Sometimes some of the rear elements can extend back and possibly hit the camera. I did not have that problem in this case, and you also lose the ability to focus to infinity, which isn't a problem when shooting with macro because you're not going to get anywhere near infinity. In terms of construction, I'm pretty happy with it. All metal, weighs 11.2 ounces, 318 grams. Focus is still smooth, aperture adjusts, no real complaints. It does get down fairly compact when it's focused to infinity, but extending it to go macro, it does get, well, I mean, twice as large. In terms of usability, there are a few things that you should keep in mind. The first is that this is not a modern macro lens design. It's basically an extension tube incorporated into the lens, so as you extend further and further and get closer to 1:1, you're going to be losing a significant amount of light. You're going to want either a tripod or a flash to use the lens. The next issue is the working distance at 1:1 isn't very great. This is going to be the case with any 50, 60 millimeter, somewhere in those ranges. Macro lens that basically at 1:1 you have to focus right in front of the lens. So if you're trying to take a photo of something, let's say on a flat surface, the bottom of the lens might hit the surface before what you want to photograph is in focus. If you're using a tripod with a focusing rail or something like that, that can also get in the way. That was a problem I ran into. So you are limited in terms of what you can do with the lens because of the short focal distance. This is why people tend to prefer 90s, 100s, 105s, 150, 200 millimeters. For macro work, it allows you to get further away from your subject. This would be especially true if you're trying to do something like a bug or a small animal or creature or something like that. You're going to get way too close for them to most likely be comfortable. And the last concern you might have is that the lens is relatively slow at f3, but as you increase the magnification and get to 1:1, the depth of field just becomes so small that you really want to maximize that by shooting at f8, f11, f16, and that's also why flash tends to work well, because you're not going to have a lot of light to work with. In terms of image quality, I was really impressed with the lens. It was sharp, I didn't notice any major vignetting, there wasn't any distortion going on, colors looked pretty good, there was no chromatic aberration, so really blown away by the quality of the lens, considering that it was basically no-name manufacturer pumping this out in the 80s. And now getting to a really important factor, the price. This lens generally sits around $80 to $90 on eBay, depending on manufacturer and the amount of the lens. If you're patient, you might be able to find it maybe less than that, and if you broaden your search, you're going to have a better time. So if maybe the f3, the f2.8, anywhere in there, there's usually some on eBay. I'll have an affiliate link down below to the search results on eBay so you can see what is currently available, and if you make a purchase through that link, I get a small amount of money and it helps me with the channel. The comparable lenses kind of in the price range are going to be the micro Nikkor 55mm, and then stepping up to $120, $130 range is going to be the 90mm 2.8 lenses, and those are interesting because you get that extra working distance that definitely makes life easier. Now, I was impressed with this lens, but the short working distance really holds me back from saying, yeah, go out there, try to track down a copy of this lens. I've got my Tamron DI-SP, it's 90mm, and that extra working distance is very nice to have. So instead of going out and picking up one of the 55 f3s, f2.8s, you might want to think about some extension tubes. The experience isn't going to be any different than slapping some extension tubes on maybe a 50mm you already have, a 60, an 85, whatever. Trying that out first instead of spending more money on this lens, and also the 90mm 2.8s, just having that extra working distance is probably going to make things a lot nicer in the long run. If you've got one of these lenses, I'd be interested to hear about the manufacturer and the mount that you've got, and also your thoughts on the lens and whether you're really bothered by that short working distance. Maybe it's just me. But that will wrap it up for this video. I'll have links around to other videos, more macro stuff coming in the future. Still got lenses to review, so there will be lots of great stuff in the future. So make sure not to miss it by hitting that subscribe button, and I will see you in the next video.